if they want a place to live, right?
Yeah, like if they want to buy now or not.
Yeah.
Hey, David.
Hey, David.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, hey.
How are you guys doing?
Got Mary jumping on. Andrea. Hey, Andrea. Watson, are you on your phone or your computer?
Hi, Mary. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Good, good. Watson, if you're somewhere where you can turn on your video, at least say hi for a sec, or if not, no biggie.
Hey, Nate. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm here. Yeah.
You're sitting in the dark.
No, it just seems dark.
Mm. How about that 1031 class today, huh?
Man, awesome.
Doesn't that make your mind just start thinking of different possibilities that you could probably pull off that you didn't think even were an option? I mean, I think of all kinds of clients that if I could just have them have a strategic consultation with Ray, or maybe even watch that video, guys. I've already uploaded it into Workplace. You can grab it there. It's on our training archive site already. You can grab the YouTube link there. If you've got a client that's an investor that's thinking about juggling their assets around, have them watch it. Have them set up a consultation with Ray because wow. I mean, just giving them new options that they hadn't thought of before and to not pay taxes on it and compound their assets.
I mean, it's
not as simplistic.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's not as simplistic as selling one property and buying another one. There's like so many different spokes to deferring taxes and building your assets. So.
Well, there's so much.
What's up? Sorry, what's up, guys? I just got it to work. It wasn't working before, but I'm here. I'm here with Oscar. So,
hey guys,
listen in.
The Dino Duo. What were you saying, Eric?
I think just with Ray, there's so much information on 1031 exchanges that I mean, I think I've seen that training 3 times now, and like you said, Jeff, you pick up something new every time. And I think the key to that is just knowing that there are options. So you want to get them in front of Ray if that pops up. I was talking to Watson earlier today about that class, and you don't have to know all of it. You just have to know that there are definitely property owners out there that have investment properties that have no idea you can even do a reverse 1031 exchange. They're thinking, wow, if I sell my house, my investment property, I'd really like to get something different. But if I sell it, am I going to be able to, even get something or buy anything? So that reverse option gives you that additional, option of finding something first and then putting your house on the market. So what a cool thing. I think the most important thing to remember is I don't have to know everything about it. I just need to have Ray's phone number and how to market it a little bit. So when you're talking to somebody that owns investment properties, you can say, did you know this was even an option?
Right. And a couple of things that I really like is the construction 1031 exchange, to be either build or fix up a property and get it all done within that time frame, and it all defers the taxes of the money you're putting in there. Yeah. And also the 30-year lease.
Yeah.
Doing a 30-year lease is just as good as getting a deed, and that opened up probably a whole another avenue of options to pass assets to your heirs that I just am really intrigued with right now.
Yeah, really good stuff.
Hey, so Rachel, I see you put in the chat there. If you go to our Team Limitless Workplace group, EXP Workplace group, the Team Limitless one, I've already uploaded his slide deck and the video from today's training in there. So his contact info is on there.
Thank you.
All right, Eric, this might be our crew.
I like it. Yeah, we got some fun things to discuss today for sure. So last couple of days, well, it's been a few weeks, right? But we've had some really interesting offers that we've been working on, and helping out the agents. And I had something else actually planned tonight to go over, and we'll probably bump that back to next week. I just kind of thought this would be a good opportunity to get into what we're seeing right now in the market, because if you don't have a buyer right this moment and you pick one up tomorrow, this is what you need to know. And if you get a listing tomorrow, or you have listings you're working with, it's something that you need to know and really be aware of what's happening. I've never seen the market like this. I mean, it was pretty crazy back in 07, 08, but well, I guess, yeah, 07 mostly, but not quite like this, Jeff. I think inventory is just so low, and the appreciation that we've seen, that we've got buyers that are just going way over market price, or over appraised value. So values are getting pushed up, appraisals are getting pushed up, and buyers are just desperate to get into homes right now. So I wanted to go over, first of all, we do have a few terminologies and verbiage we want to kind of discuss. And we've actually got maybe even a couple examples that we could look at. I didn't talk to Watson about it at all, but we've got, he's working on a couple offers right now that fit perfect in this scenario. So I don't know if you want to, if you feel, I didn't even ask you, so now I'm putting you on the spot. I apologize. If you want to kind of go over some of those scenarios of what we're talking about, so we can actually help you out on a real-time basis as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. So actually, my brother, he's buying the home. He's listening in, so it's kind of nice we're both here. But yeah, exactly. Eric helped me out the last couple of days. We ran up some offers and sent them in, and we're waiting right now. But what we've had to do is we kind of made our budget, and we decided that we're gonna be able to put an offer $17,000 above the appraised value. And so we wrote up an offer and we put all the information in with the addendum saying that. But even then, there's still multiple offers. So I've been in contact with the listing agent, and now we're thinking, before they make their final decision, maybe we even put a little bit more money down to make it more competitive for us. And so we're in the process of, we've been chatting tonight, and we're deciding if it's something that would make sense if we put more money and down to get the home, and stuff above appraised value to get the home, and stuff like that. So those are kind of the situations. There's 2 or 3 listings that we're interested in, and obviously we're just trying to get into one of them, but you kind of have to be aggressive and make decisions to help you to get the home. So exactly, that's kind of the situation we're in right now. So
perfect. Yeah. So and everybody's in that situation that's putting in offers on pretty much every house out there on the market. So let's see, Jeff, I've got see if I can do a screen share here.
It's open. You should be able to. There you go.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah. An addendum.
Yeah. So this is basically some verbiage that I think Lynn was using just recently on an offer that she put in, and we discussed it over the past few days. And what we want to take a look at here is, we've already put in the purchase price in the REPC. So this is an addendum that is going on to the back end of the purchase contract. And it's really, it incorporates the REPC, what's in the REPC, as an add-on. So it all becomes part of one offer, because on the purchase contract, you click the box that this REPC does have an additional addendum, and it's addendum 1. So it's automatically included. And that's important, because then the seller can't accept the REPC and ignore the addendum, right? So we definitely include that and hit that checkbox on the purchase contract to include addendum 1. And so what we've got is just kind of a scenario. Let's say our house is, the asking price is 400,000, for example, and we're going to come over, say $15,000 over asking price. So our purchase price would be 415. So there's a few things that we need to, pay attention to when we're going over the asking price. First of all, if it appraises for 400,000, we're coming up above what that appraisal is. So there's a few things that happen when you do that. First of all, if your house appraises for 400, the asking price is 400, but our purchase price is 415, when you're getting a loan on the property, the bank is going to have you pay the difference of that 400 to 415 in cash at closing. So in that situation, we need to be aware that in this market, we're probably going to be paying our own closing costs as a buyer. We've got our down payment. So let's say you're doing a 5% down payment on 400,000. That's 20,000 plus your closing costs, which are going to be at least 5. So you're already into it 25,000 as a down payment. Plus you have the additional 15 in cash at closing. So one thing to be super aware of is, what if if we're going to do above and beyond the appraised value, we need to make sure that if that appraisal comes in actually lower than what the asking price is, we need to have some security and some safeguards in place if that happens. So in this scenario, I'm just going to type on here just so you guys can see a little bit more visually what I'm talking about. So I'm going to type in, so the listing price is 400,000. Let's say we have 5% down, which is going to be 20,000. And just using easy numbers, closing costs, 5,000. So we have, and then our offer is 415. Type, Eric. 415. So with this offer, if it appraises for 400, we're going to have 25 plus 15. So our total down is $40,000. Correct?
Yep.
So if we state in our offer that we are going to pay, let's say 15,000 over appraisal, what if it appraises at, say, what if, or if we're going to offer 415 but the appraisal only comes in at 380, what does that mean? Well, it means that we're going to have to pay the difference between 380 and 415. So instead of paying this difference of 415 and 400 of 15,000, when that appraisal comes in $20,000 lower, you're actually going to have to bump that up an additional 20,000. So if appraisal comes in at 380, then the bank is going to use that number as what they're willing to put a loan on. And why is that? I mean, when we talk about it, why is that? It's because the banks are looking at that property as their security, right? That's their, they have, it's a lien against that property. So if someone were to foreclose, that's what it's worth. So they're not going to give you a loan for $420,000 on a property that appraises for 380. So the difference has to be made up by the buyer. So we've got to be careful that we don't put our buyers or us in a situation where now we're obligated to pay an additional $20,000 more than what the bank is willing to loan, unless we're aware of that and we're comfortable with it and we have that down payment available. Am I explaining that well, Jeff, so far?
Yep. I just wanted to add in there that we're talking about a scenario here in presenting the offer, probably in a case where you're waiving the appraisal condition. So
Okay.
the appraisal condition, obviously, you guys know we still are reserving the right to renegotiate or to cancel. If it doesn't work out, we get our earnest money back and we go on our merry way. But in this market, the reason Eric's bringing this up, so many people are putting the offer and waiving the appraisal condition, and sometimes even putting up their earnest money to be non-refundable upon acceptance of the offer, just to be competitive. So we got to pull in those other elements there, Eric, that are part of an aggressive offer, to where you could maybe set yourself up to fail without really knowing it, because you've removed some of your normal outs and contingencies, right?
Yes. Yeah, and we should, yeah, so let me, I'm afraid to touch anything and have my screen share disappear. Can you guys still see my screen okay?
Yeah, it's navigating for us.
Okay, good. So let's take a look at that purchase contract, what we're talking about. There's a few important items here that we want to look at. What Jeff was just discussing about here is 8.2. Buyer's obligation to purchase property is not conditioned upon the property appraising for less than the purchase price. So this is very common right now, that buyers are waiving that appraisal condition. Another thing that is very common that we're seeing quite a bit is in 8.3, financing required, section BI, is buyer's right to cancel before the finance appraisal deadline. So if the buyer, in the buyer's sole discretion, is not satisfied with the terms and conditions of the loan, so that can be any reason at all, the buyer, after the due diligence deadline, can cancel the REPC, providing written notice to the seller no later than the finance deadline, whereupon X amount is going to be released to the seller if you cancel in between there. So you can actually see I've put in 0 there before. So that right now in this market, having 0 there does not give you quite the strongest offer as some of the other offers that are coming in. Now, let's say your earnest money up here, let's say it's 5,000, for example. This number right here can be anywhere from $0 to $5,000.
Hey, I don't know if it's just me, but your screen isn't moving. Is that just me?
No, I was just going to say something to Eric as well. He tends to have this problem from time to time, but you're stuck on the bottom of page 1 of the REPC, Eric, just so you know.
Page 1 of the REPC?
Yeah. When you scrolled to 8.2, it didn't scroll for us. So I don't know if it's just frozen or whatever. We're looking at section 2 of the REPC.
Okay. Try this.
But you read it. I mean, we're following with you. You read the clause you were talking about.
Now what are you seeing?
It's still loading.
Okay.
So nothing yet. It just says you've started a screen share.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna zap that. Come over to my other screen.
So while he's doing that, guys, in a different market, and some of you are getting into real estate in this crazy market. So as far as working with buyers, it can get nothing but better for you during your career. Let's just say that. This is a really, really tough time for buyers right now. And so some of these clauses, the reason Eric and I were talking about this and we wanted to bring this up to you guys is because it's not the norm. You've got to inform your buyer clients what their competition is doing. What other offers are you seeing on your listings, or in a group setting like this, you're hearing about this is what people are doing out there. A first-time home buyer is not going to really compute that. So your job is to give them all the information and the market conditions that are existing right now so that they can make the best decision for themselves. Now, Eric's providing a scenario here that's pretty close to what Watson's doing. They have the capital to be able to offer above appraisal and to do some of these things, but not all buyers do. Obviously, right? Not all people can say, hey, whatever it appraises at, I'll throw an extra $15,000 at it. I'll pay my own closing costs. It's just not realistic for some buyers, but this is a scenario that's going to be common. So Eric, if you're there, your screen share popped up and you are actually on 8.2, but your video's off.
So in what scenario though would you be able to not have the appraisal condition, but then to also have like require financing? Because isn't that at the bank's discretion with the appraisal condition?
Well,
Or
what
is
Eric
it just because he has enough above and beyond what the appraisal? Okay, I got it.
Right. So the bank is going to take the lower of the purchase price or the appraisal and do their numbers off of. Okay. So if your loan, you qualify for a 5% down product, you're going to put 5% down of the appraisal amount because that's what the bank's going to go off of. If you're saying I'm going to offer more than the appraisal, you've got to put your 5% down and bridge that gap from the purchase price. So if you've removed the appraisal condition, you're saying I can still move forward and get financing as long as I cover the difference. So what Eric's getting at is protecting you as a buyer so that the seller will actually sell it at that price. Okay, we see a lot of offers that don't include provisions that make it an agreement between a buyer and a seller. And Eric's going to get to that. But when we see something that says the buyer agrees to pay X amount over the appraisal, doesn't necessarily mean the seller agreed to sell it at that. Right?
That makes sense. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to, talk a little bit more about that and make it even more clear because there's other things that come into play depending on what you've included in your offer. So in some cases, like I brought up earlier, some people are saying, you know what? I want this house. I'm willing to offer you $2,000 or $5,000. I've even seen $15,000 non-refundable earnest money upon acceptance. That means it doesn't matter. Due diligence, appraisal, financing, all those things. If they don't buy it, the seller gets that $15,000 or whatever it might have been. So that's their like, hey, why not? I'll take this because if they don't buy it, I'm going to keep this money and I'm going to just go resell it to somebody else. So crazy, crazy. Eric, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, no video.
No video.
Which is fine, but I see your screen share.
Oh, okay. That's the important thing. There we go.
Yep. Okay. Then you're back.
Killed my other monitor. It's causing issues. Can you see me scroll now?
Yeah, it's moving.
Okay. So we're just talking about the, I missed what you said, Jeff. It was probably very good and insightful, but I didn't hear it. So
it's all right. Pretend it was nothing. Just keep rolling.
Okay, perfect. So if we cancel after due diligence and before the finance appraisal deadline, this amount is what's going to go to the seller if you don't close on the property. So this matching the earnest money obviously makes your offer much stronger. And we're seeing a lot of that, Jeff, where I know you were just mentioning completely having earnest money non-refundable upon acceptance. Mm-hmm. And that makes the offer really as strong as possible, within your boundaries. As who was I was chatting with just yesterday. It's like if you have an offer, if your offer is 400,000 and you're FHA and you're doing no closing costs, asked by, paid by the seller, and you're doing everything that you can, and you come up against an exact same offer that is 100% cash at the same price, you're probably not going to get that offer. But what can you do about it? You have to work within the boundaries that you have. So You just have to put your best possible offer forward when there's a multiple offer situation. And this is one thing that you can do, is by having this, your earnest money basically go hard after your due diligence deadline. So in a normal situation, when you put a house under contract, like in a normal market, you would love to have 30, 32 days to close. And you'd love to get that inspection ordered like as soon as you go under contract. And then once that inspection is, your inspector gets in there 2 or 3 days later, there's no red flags, then order the appraisal. Because your inspection is a few $100, the appraisal's going to be another $500 or so, right? So find out if there's something going on in the property before you purchase that appraisal, right? But in this market, we're trying to close as quickly as we can. So we're going to have that inspection and appraisal ordered immediately after going under contract. So you're really putting 800 at risk instead of just 300 like you would in a normal market, which is what I prefer to do, obviously, is because we're there to protect our clients from having losses throughout the process. Because there are some things that pop up on an inspection that are unforeseen that you can't see when you're, previewing the home. But this, by putting your full earnest money down here, you're still protected during the due diligence phase, where if you do the non-refundable earnest money, you're not. So our job as an agent to really comb through a house and look at it very closely on that first inspection becomes really important if we're doing a non-refundable earnest money. So let's see, anything else I should cover on the REPC, Jeff, you can think of as pertains to that addendum?
No, that kind of covers it. I mean, just to make clear the separation of the non-refundable earnest money that you might see or might talk to your clients about. Upon acceptance just means before due diligence. The one Eric was just talking about is after due diligence. That's a trigger event. So they're both trigger events. So one, upon acceptance, that would be an addendum clause that we would write in there. So I think, are you going to go back to the clause, Eric, and put that into the scenario and go over the verbiage of what's important about that clause?
Yeah, let's do that.
I think the setup that you're trying to do is, okay, the offer's being presented. There's going to be some sort of non-refundable earnest money that's at risk for your client. And I'm assuming in the scenario, we're removing the appraisal condition, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So this didn't save the first part. I saved it earlier. So let's talk about this verbiage. As I was mentioning, we're going to add this in as part of the REPC right from the beginning. As per section 8.2 of the REPC, which is the appraisal waiver that we're waiving right here. In the event the appraisal comes in less than the agreed purchase price, which remember is $415. So if it comes in less than that, the buyer and the seller agree that the purchase price is to be, and then we above the appraised value. So whatever number this is, so right now, this number is automatically 15,000 because we're doing a purchase price 15,000 above asking price, assuming that it's going to appraise it, say 400,000. So if it appraises for 400,000, or let's just put that in there. So let's say we're going to match this and we're going to put 15,000 above the appraised value. This actually protects you from the downside as a buyer. We're writing this as a buyer, not as a seller, obviously. So this verbiage is favoring the buyer. So let's look at a couple scenarios. Let's say our purchase price is $415, and we are going to purchase 15,000 above appraised value, and it appraises for 415, which is our purchase price. Wouldn't that be 430,000? Because it's 15,000 above that appraised value.
It would.
So what we want to do is we want to add in a security blanket here where purchase price not to exceed the original purchase price of 415. So that caps it. So if it, what if it appraised for 420? Purchase price is still going to be 415. If it appraises for 400,000, purchase price is still going to be 415. But if it comes in at let's say 380, let's say that appraisal hits 380, like we were talking about a minute ago, then what does this clause state? It says that the buyer and the seller agree purchase price is to be 15,000 above appraised value. So what would your purchase price be now?
$395.
$395. So obviously this favors the buyer, correct? And Jeff and I were talking about this earlier, how not every agent is gonna see and understand the verbiage necessarily, but this protects your buyer from really overpaying for a house that appraises lower. Because right now, sometimes our asking prices, don't you think some of them are a little bit inflated because of what's happening in the market? Yeah, for sure. So this is a great clause to put in there to protect on both sides, to protect your maximum purchase price. So this is like a highest and best at 415. Also gives you the option to get it a little bit lower if that appraisal comes in way low. So what about that scenario where, let's say, like we wanted to increase the purchase price, right? After we put in an offer, right? So let's see.
Hey, before you leave this page here,
Yeah.
Eric, are you going to like a highest and best scenario?
No, not yet. But Watson was mentioning, just kind of like, well, we've already submitted an offer similar to this. These aren't his exact numbers, but it's similar to that. But there's a lot of offers on the property. So if you're going to add an addendum to this, and you're going to raise your purchase price, that addendum would be something like this: purchase price to be, say, 420. And you would adjust this amount here. Is that how you would write it up, Jeff? If you're going to add.
So if you're coming back, let's say this clause was already submitted, and you're coming back with another addendum, like Watson said,
Yep.
put it out there. Hey, we're thinking about even sweetening the pot right here.
Yep.
So let's say you've numbered these now. So let's say number 2 of addendum number 1. You want to identify the item in the addendum that you're referring to. So I would word it something like, in reference to item 2 of addendum number 1, the purchase price shall not exceed the original purchase price of $420,000. So I'm rewriting that sentence in that clause and changing the purchase amount. Anything not changed on an addendum stays the same, right?
Right.
So you want to be very, very specific on what you're changing. And Eric, I want to point, and you're probably going there next, but I want to point out one other thing before we're talking about changing anything on here. A very important part of this clause that we've put in here, and Lynn just put one under contract with this exact verbiage. And I wish she was on the call because she's got a really good story on how she got that deal. But what we're seeing a lot is buyers presenting an offer on their intentions. Okay. They want to pay 15,000 over appraisal. They're capable. They're willing to pay up to 415,000. So that's what they state. So an important part of this sentence might be missing. It might say, as per section 8.2 of the REPC, in the event the appraisal comes in less than the agreed upon purchase price, buyer agrees to pay $15,000 above appraisal. You see what was left out there?
The seller
didn't
agreeing.
agree. Seller didn't agree. The buyer's saying, I agree to pay $15,000 over appraisal. That's great. Let's say on this same scenario, the appraisal comes in at 380. The seller never agreed to sell it at 395. They agreed to sell it at 415. So it's very important that we have that in there, that it says the buyer and seller agree that the purchase price is to be $15,000 above appraisal. So when that's submitted, like in Lynn's case, using this exact verbiage, the seller accepted her offer. So she's under contract. So at this point, do you almost hope that the appraisal comes in really low?
For sure.
Right? Because that gap is going to get bigger from the original purchase price, but contractually and bilaterally, both parties have agreed the new purchase price shall be $15,000 over appraisal. Now, this is really important because just yesterday, I don't know if you noticed it or had a chance to look at it. I know you knew it was coming out, Eric, but they just released an appraisal condition addendum in the MLS for UtahRealEstate.com. I hate it. I'm not going to use it. Can you look at that and maybe determine why I wouldn't want to use that compared to the scenario Eric was just laying out for us on the buyer and seller agree that the new purchase price shall be X amount over the new appraisal?
Can you see the addendum?
Yes, it's right there. So look at item 1A, guys. If you can avoid putting in an appraisal floor for your client, if you're representing the buyer, you probably wouldn't want to use this, right? As a seller, and Eric already mentioned this, some sellers and their agents are going to read this and maybe not even fully understand what they're agreeing to. It's not like we're trying to trick them. It's very transparent and straightforward. If this event happens, buyer and seller agree that this is going to happen, right? You guys are going to be smarter than that. And you're now going to, if you're representing the seller, you're going to pull something like this into the play and say, hey, wait a minute. What if it appraises at 375 or 380? You offered me 415. I don't want to sell it for, in Eric's scenario, 395. So you might counter offer that buyer, right? And put a floor, so long as, like in reference to item 2 of addendum number 1, so long as the appraisal is not less than. But as an agent representing the buyer, would you volunteer that up front if you're trying to get the best deal for your client? Probably not. I wouldn't. So this was just literally approved and put up into the MLS and updated yesterday.
Right there.
What is that date? Well, it was updated. So if you look in the MLS,
Okay.
when you go to the forms, it says updated March 1st.
They don't even have a fillable form yet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how fast things are moving. They're like, we got to get this form out as soon as we can because of what's going on in the market. And they don't even, it's a fillable form coming soon.
Yep, they do that a lot when they come out with forms, is they just like get it out there and then there's revisions that come later. It's like, wait a minute, that doesn't work so well. So this one has nothing to do with the scenario Eric's talking about. I just wanted to point it out and make you aware of it because you're going to be on the seller side too. And it's very important, you know, and that's why you've got Eric and I and others in the group that you can collaborate with. It's like, hey, let's get another set of eyeballs on this and make sure you're interpreting it correctly. Because if you're representing the seller and you talk to your client and you're saying, hey, they waived the appraisal condition, they're willing to pay $15,000 over appraisal, but no more than 415. Or if those are your talking points and your seller goes under contract, and then in this scenario, it appraises at 380 and your seller at some point realizes he is now contractually obligated to sell it for 395, who's going to be to blame? You know, they're counting on you on protecting them in the transaction. So we're going over this from one perspective, but put yourself on the other side on the receiving end as well, so that you're aware we do things a little bit differently depending on who we're representing, right?
Yeah, no question. Watson or anyone else, do you have any questions on kind of the verbiage or, you know, adjusting any contracts or?
No, I think I'm good for now. I'll let you know if any comes up, but you guys answered most of them, so thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
So to clarify, just make sure I understand, the appraisal floor is another way of saying a bottom, like a minimum appraised amount.
Right. So just like a buyer has an appraisal condition, if it's intact, if it doesn't appraise for what they offered, they can back out or it's renegotiation time, right? So this is kind of like to protect the seller. Hey, if it appraises way too low, I don't want to be obligated to sell it. I know I overpriced it. I listed it high, but that's what I wanted. I don't want to commit myself to a low appraisal and have to sell it for that price. So the floor would be in favor of the seller. Yes. And that would be in there so that they say, I'm willing to sell it, but if it's below X, I'm not selling. And so that gives them a way to not have to proceed. Where in a traditional, setting in our environment, the seller doesn't have any outs once they're under contract. And so this enables them to go under contract and actually have an out on a future event, which traditionally they don't have, right? If the appraisal comes in lower, they're just gonna have to lower their price based on what Eric is presenting, for his buyer. But with this clause in here, this would be to protect the seller. It's like, hey, wait a minute, within reason, I'll come down, but I'm not coming down below X amount of dollars. So without that, sellers, once they're under contract, it's all the cards are in the hand of the buyer for due diligence, for financing, for appraisal, for closing the loan. The seller is just kind of like sitting back and waiting until and if renegotiations come up based on one of those conditions, but they can't cancel on the buyer. So that's what this is for. But not really pertinent to Eric's example because we were writing up an offer for the buyer. I just wanted to make you guys aware that that was there and that this is excluded from the clause Eric was showing us. Eric,
It actually helps me to understand Eric's more when you see the other side of it. So that actually is helpful.
Absolutely. Good.
Jeff, if you were to receive an offer representing a seller with the clause we just discussed, is there any reason why you wouldn't use this appraisal form as a counter?
Yeah, you could use the exact form or you could use the verbiage from the form. Sometimes I will just use that clause on another addendum. I might be counter offering on some other terms as well. And I don't like to use this addendum specifically for this one thing and then do another addendum. And I got like 3 on my counter offer. I like to combine them. And with some of the clauses, you guys know that if you've written up offers, you can drag and drop, you can add some of these clauses to your REPC. So it is all on one form. But yes, on the seller side, for sure, I'm going to counter offer with this. And guess what it's going to be? It's going to be in your scenario, it's going to be the 400. I listed it at 400. You offer me 415. You're willing to bridge the gap. I'm going to say the floor to be 400.
Yep.
And then I still get my 415 that you offered, right?
Yep.
Or I'm going forward with another buyer that's going to be a little bit more flexible to my terms.
So with the offers that you and Lynn have seen, I know this is like a really difficult question, but so like Watson said that there was 5 other offers on the property that one of the properties he was offering on. When you are seeing 5 or maybe 10 offers, how is Lynn making those decisions where, oh man, there's only 2 offers on here. Maybe I won't do non-refundable earnest money, where if there's 10, I will. And I know that's really a difficult, place to be, but is it more on the buyer's comfort level and how you feel about the house and where what the value is and the condition of the home?
Absolutely. All those things come into play. In fact, I just had this conversation with Audrey before this call on a buyer that she's starting to work with, because she was almost feeling like she wasn't doing the best job if she's encouraging them to pay more for the property, right? She wants to get them a good deal or whatever. So our job as buyer's agents is to inform our clients of the market conditions and assess their ability and their risk tolerance and what they're willing to move forward on. So honestly, guys, the comps, the comparables do not matter. It's your competition. Okay. When we're listing a property, we're listing against competition. When we're a buyer, we're putting our offer based on how aggressive the other buyers are going to be. But that doesn't mean you want to encourage your clients to get themselves into a situation where they're regretful or where they got them, maybe they offered too much. So if they're willing to put up non-refundable earnest money, they may not even consider that as an option unless you bring it up. The appraisal is a condition. Who in their right mind pays more than the property is worth, right? A typical buyer is going to think that if they're not educated on today's market. So we're having the conversation saying, I just want to inform you what's going on out there. So we can give examples on offers we've received on our listings. You guys, we can all give examples of other ones that we've collaborated and talk about. I've heard of this. I've heard of buyers doing this. So now our buyers need to say, okay, what am I capable of doing? If they barely qualified for say a 5% down program, and they don't even have enough money to cover their closing costs out of their own pocket, over and above the 5% down, they're going to have a really, really tough time in this market. And it's nothing against them. It's just the competition is more fierce than that. So it used to be that we would put in an offer and, hey, let's try and get the seller to give us a credit back out of the purchase price for our closing costs. In a more stable market, it would be, hey, let's bump up the purchase price and then ask the seller to give that bump up back to us. But it still has to appraise for that bump up, right? So to say, hey, I'll pay over an appraisal price, but I can't pay over appraisal price and the closing costs. So I'll pay over appraisal price, but give me some back as a credit for my closing costs. So now we're adding up down payment, like Eric had on your other addendum there. Eric, you had the down payment, you had the amount over the appraisal price and the closing costs. Add all that up. You've got to divide your available resources up among those things. Okay, so it might not mean, okay, let's not do a non-refundable earnest money because I can't afford to lose $5,000 and not get it. So let's throw it all at above appraisal, right? Within reason. My conversation with my buyers is like this, is like, what's your walkaway price? You know what you can afford. We're talking to the lender, what your payment's going to be. So that's going to equate to a certain dollar amount that we can offer, right? Your monthly payment that you've got to cover is going to be X. If that means that you can afford more than what they're asking for the property and still be within your comfort zone of what your monthly debt service is going to be, then it might make sense if they look at it that way. Because if they don't buy now, what does that mean for them in 6 to 12 months? Here locally, that probably means they're paying 10% more for that property. Does it make sense at maybe a 3% or maybe even less interest rate to lock in a home at 5 or even 10% more than it's worth? Because it's locked in now at today's value of the dollar, knowing where Utah and Salt Lake and Utah County, the Wasatch Front is going, it might make a lot of sense. And so having that conversation with them and have them look at it that way, because next year they might go, oh my gosh, why didn't I buy that property at $415? Because now I got to pay $450. And the interest rates are 3.5 or 4. So some buyers, honestly, especially if interest rates start going up, are going to be priced out of the market in certain price ranges. They just can't keep up with that. And until there's a stabilizing, and when there is a stabilizing, it's likely the prices are going to be worth more than they are now. So you're kind of having that dialogue with them on what are you locking in and what can you afford, because that's not going to change for 30 years if you choose to stay in that home. So there's some good value there. That's a good conversation to have with your clients so that they understand what that really means. Now I can give them specific examples because I've been buying real estate for 30 years. I can go back to the early 90s and on and look at every single purchase and say, what if I would have paid 5% more than it was really worth at the time? For me, long-term, wouldn't have mattered, right? If they're only going to live in the house 2, 3, 4 years, then that's a different conversation. I would say if they're living in the house 3 to 5 years or more, aggression is kind of a hard conversation to have with your buyer client, but they got to be aggressive to be competitive in this market. And you're just educating them on the circumstances that exist today. You're not trying to bump your commission. You're not trying to get 3% of X instead of this, right? It's just the reality of the market that we're in. And sometimes it's going to take you putting in 2 or 3 offers for that client and they don't win. And they're going, oh my gosh, we offered $15,000 over appraisal and $5,000 earnest money and we didn't get it. Sometimes the listing agents will tell you what you lost to, sometimes they won't. But yeah.
I do have a question on that note. So I'm actually taking a first-time home buyer client out to lunch on Thursday. She's a first-time home buyer. I'm not a super experienced real estate agent yet. So are there any like visual aids to this that you would bring with you to help them understand this concept? Because other buyers I've worked with, they don't understand this until they lose 3 times and then they get it. I'm just wondering if there's a way, like if there's some resources like visual aids of things that we can use that would help them to realize exactly what's going on rather than losing out to understand.
Not that I'm aware of. Eric, you may know of something.
The only thing I can think of is what Josh Metal was sharing with us a couple weeks ago about the inventory over the past year. How we've had a decline in Utah. I think it was 65% in a year or something like that, like lower than it was a year ago. So real estate is like so many other things, like the stock market and the cost of goods and everything. Supply and demand change pricing. And if we always hear about, I always think about when a seller sets the new market price for a neighborhood, which is our goal when we're listing the price, right? We want to be the new bench setter. We want to set that new high price when we're selling. And when you think about it, it's like, well, how does that appraiser appraise that house at a higher price than any of the other CMAs in the past did? They have to have some kind of lenience to have that price go a little bit higher and higher based on the demand of what the market is telling them, right? If there's multiple offers on a property and there's multiple that are over asking price, that is telling the appraiser and the market that the value of that home is higher because of supply and demand. And one thing right now, Rachel, is our supply of homes right now is incredibly low. Like incredibly low. So it is going to continue to push that pricing up. And I mean, we've all been there where we've been in real estate for a while, that you're going to have buyers that have regrets of not putting a little bit more aggressive offer in the first 1 or 2 times until they learn that, oh, wow, Rachel was right. It is tough. We're not winning some of these offers. So as far as visual, yeah, I don't think specifically I can't think of anything specifically that's physical. I could look and see if I could find something, but something to show them. But it is definitely what's going on in the market right now is the inventory is pushing prices up. The lack of.
No, yeah, that's a good idea, is to show them like some form of visual just for the inventory alone.
Yeah.
Some of the conditions, you could go to the Division of Real Estate's website and pull up their most current newsletter where they do quarterly stats, right? Do that, pull something from there. The website that Eric was referring to, that Josh uses, is Keeping Current Matters, or KCM.com. They put out a blog, and in their blog, a lot of times it's visual. You can subscribe to them and get PDFs and get all kinds of great visuals. It's not that expensive, but you could also swipe some material for your conversation just right from their blog, because they produce a lot of graphs. The problem is it's national. Okay.
Remind me who that was you said?
Keeping Current Matters,
Okay,
or
gotcha.
KCM. That's a national news outlet though. So you're going to get a lot of national stats. One of the conversations you have to have with your buyer is about the market where they're buying. If you're meeting them here in Utah County, Salt Lake County, or whatever, wherever it is that they're looking to buy, you might want to pull up some numbers just on the MLS of what the inventory looks like in their price range in their area. One thing you can do, there's a statistics form. Eric, I don't know if you can scroll up to the top and show them the statistics tab, but you could put in today's date and you could actually go back to the same date last year on a search parameter. Let's say single family homes under $400,000 active. Well, what did it look like on this date last year? And it'll give you that comparison. So you can easily compile some things, but make sure that they know, your new buyer, that they know that when you're talking about the market, it depends on what market they're in. Okay, the Draper market's different than the market in the Avenues and the Sugar House. It's different than Mapleton and Springville. It's different than Lehigh and Eagle Mountain. Those are all different markets. So you can't even really say what's the market like in Utah. Well, I mean, are you buying in Santaquin or St. George? So talk to her about, that's where your value comes in. You're going to drill down on what's happening in her market, and it's not going to be good news. So just be transparent. I mean, it sucks to be a buyer right now, but you know what? It's better to be a buyer right now than wish you had been a buyer right now next year or the year after or the year after. Okay, because we're in a very fluid market right now, and there's no indicator. I think I heard I can't remember which outlet it was. I heard somebody talking about that in Utah right now, it's going to take 9 years to fix our inventory problem. I can't remember which outlet I heard that on, but let's say it's even half of that, 4 years to fix our inventory problem. What does that do to supply and demand during that time? So have that discussion with them, and also working hand in hand with their lender on what they can afford monthly, so that you can find out their buying power. And you're not their lender, but have some conversations with them about their ability for down payment, closing costs, because their parents might have told them, hey, offer X based on what they're asking for, and ask them to pay for your closing cost, ask for a home warranty. Some of those things that traditionally were acceptable in a different market almost will make you lose the offer today. And so buyers have to figure something out. We've got clients that are borrowing not their down payment. If they have the down payment, they're borrowing the closing costs from their parents, because the seller's not going to give it to them. They don't have to.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Plus on that, the qualification with the lender, when you're having that discussion with the lender, let's say they are approved up to 400. If you're shopping in that 400 range and they fall in love with a house that's 400, it's probably going to go for more than 400. So they're going to be priced right out of the market. So be aware of what you're showing them that are, brand new listings that are coming out. You got to give yourself a buffer on being able to, offer more than asking price if that property demands it.
Yeah.
So the problem I'm having right now is people can't even afford the 400,000. So, and there's nothing out there. I mean, everything's going so fast that's below 400. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
They could move to Pocatello. So Rachel DL in the chat had a great idea for you to use as a visual. He said, use a video of a shark feeding frenzy.
I saw that. It made me laugh.
Yeah, DL will make you laugh. But just be upfront with them. It's not going to be easy.
Oh, yeah, that's good advice. Thank you.
Well, Eric,
Yeah.
I was thinking that we might get into escalation clauses and FHA amendatory clauses today. I had some other stuff to add, but we might want to continue this dialogue I think we're going to have Josh and his crew back next week. But
Mm.
when we come back, as far as this type of discussion, I think we should talk about some of these other clauses that are prevalent in the market. I think this is really helpful. And I did record this, so I'll get this uploaded for you guys. Give you some talking points anyway. Rachel, you could rewatch this or fast forward to a spot where Eric was explaining how to present that offer and why, and get some takeaways that you could share. You could even, like, you know, napkin presentation, you could give her an example the way Eric just did on the computer screen for us, just to be informative. That's what you've got to do right now, is be informative. You haven't even put in an offer yet, but you got to set the expectations. And if they know they're going to be frustrated going into it and they still go down that path, that's much better than going, holy shit, I had no idea it was going to be this bad. So set the expectations right up front.
Yep. Save yourself some headache, save them some headache and some time to make sure they know that what's going on. And I think a lot of people know what's going on in the market right now, but unless you're writing an offer and seeing what's, you know, being rejected on some really, really good offers, then it's not going to hit home until you've seen a couple of those come back when you think you're going to get them and you don't. And, you know, speaking of Josh next week, that might be a good thing to discuss with Josh too, just kind of what offers he's seeing get accepted, and you know, different scenarios in Utah as well.
I've been using the Wasatch Front Realtors, real estate agents website for learning and hearing some of the comments that are coming through there. It's a good place to learn. Mary's smiling because she knows, huh?
Hey, Eric, shut off your screen
Yep.
real quick.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Just so I can see everybody's videos. Yeah, that's perfect, Kim. I've been doing a lot of that lately too. Just like Workplace is a great resource for us to go into the threads and see what other people's opinions are and what they're dealing with. Some of the local Facebook groups where the real estate agents are involved with are really good. And they're having some of these discussions just like we are, and you're gonna get all levels of experience making comments on there. But it's really good information. So I encourage you guys to do that.
You have to take some things with a grain of salt.
Sure.
For sure. Well, thanks, guys. I think we'll wrap up tonight. And as always, let us know what you need help with. And yeah, interesting market for sure. A little bit more challenging than normal on the buyer side, at least. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Eric.
it.
That was awesome. Great walkthrough.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
We'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks, guys.
Guys,
Yeah.
see you, Andrea.